The wizarding world didn't just pop into existence when Harry got his letter. Behind the magic lies a history packed with game-changing events that shaped everything from Hogwarts to the Ministry of Magic. In this video, we're going to uncover 10 pivotal moments that set the stage for the world we know today. Some surprising, some sinister, but all essential. From the first Quidditch match to the crafting of the Sword of Gryffindor, and yes, even the creation of the first Horcrux. That's bound to get your nerves twisted. It's time to explore the untold stories behind the magic. Number 10. Hogwartss Founding. Finally, and without a doubt, the most pivotal event in the history of the wizarding world was the creation of Hogwarts in 990 AD by the 4 greatest wizards and witches of the time. The idea for the school came from a dream that Rowena Ravenclaw had, where a warty hog led her to the edge of a massive cliff. Rowena, alongside her 3 closest friends, Godric Gryffindor, Salazar Slytherin, and Helga Hufflepuff, brought this vision to life, founding the legendary school we know today. Their legacy was immortalized in the 4 houses that bear their names. In the beginning, the 4 were inseparable friends, and running the school came naturally to them. They didn't take on roles as headmaster or headmistress, preferring to teach rather than preside. But as we all know, the Slytherin conflict eventually drove a wedge between them, leaving only 3 of the founders to continue their work, and the rest, as they say, is history. Number 9. The Chamber of Secrets is created. Salazar Slytherin's hatred for Muggle-born wizards was common knowledge in the wizarding world. His detest for them ran so strong that he left Hogwarts in a fit of rage when the other founders disagreed with his views. Here's an excerpt from his diary that chronicles the incident. "I fear we shall never come to an accord. I cannot persuade even one of them to listen to reason. I had dared hope that Godric's thoughts aligned with my own, that he understood why the caliber of students needed to be exceptional, but he has fallen prey to the ridiculous notion that Muggleborns are somehow as capable as purebloods." In spite of leaving the institution, Salazar Slytherin's ambition was greater than any other. He created the Chamber of Secrets below Hogwarts and filled it with a basilisk to have his own vision fulfilled. His aim was for the Chamber of Secrets to be opened by the heir of Slytherin so that the beast within would purge the school of all Muggle-born wizards. Number 8. The Goblin Rebellion of 1612. Despite how imperative goblins were to the wizarding economy, their troubled relationship with humans is no secret. In fact, throughout history, we see how poorly goblins were treated by humans in the wizarding world. They were discriminated against heavily and considered a subservient breed below humankind. Naturally, this made them want to fight for themselves and earn the respect they rightfully earned in society. And after all, being in control of the economy definitely makes them deserving of it. Goblins losing their patience with human oppression resulted in a few major rebellions, one of which was the Goblin Rebellion of 1612, a bloody and vicious war that originated in Scotland at an inn in Hogsmeade. While the actual number of casualties is unknown, being officially described as a bloody and vicious war clearly shows just how detrimental it was. Unfortunately, instead of helping the goblins' cause, the rebellion made humans even more wary of them. This in turn resulted in actual laws being passed that actively oppressed these creatures. One such law was the Wand Ban of 1631, which denied goblins and other non-human creatures their right to a wand. Ironically, like most wars, one thing led to another, becoming a precursor for much more devastating conflicts. In this case, it led to the subsequent multiple Goblin Rebellions to come. Number 7. The creation of the first Horcrux. Yikes. Contrary to popular belief, Voldemort was not the first wizard to create a successful Horcrux. There had been a plethora of attempts previously, but none had succeeded, save one. Way back in history, long before any of this had started, a very ungodly wizard from ancient Greece, known as Herpo the Foul, became the first person to successfully create a Horcrux, making him one of the first evil wizards in history. That's precisely why he was known as the Foul among his peers. He had no qualms about doing anything morally questionable, and naturally was pretty on board with killing someone. Being the first one to create a Horcrux means that he was the person who came came up with its creation process. So technically, Herpo the Foul was the inventor of Horcruxes. He was entirely consumed by the dark arts, and his legacy is one of pure malevolence. Number 6. The formation of the Ministry of Magic. With how monumental the Ministry of Magic is in the Harry Potter world, you'd think it was a primordial governing body with a very deep-rooted ancient history. While the latter is true, the organization itself is not exactly that ancient. The British Ministry of Magic was created in the 1700s, precisely 1707, and was a successor to the relatively less orderly Wizards' Council. It was made as a response to the ever-growing tensions between the Muggle and Wizarding communities, which was clearly shown through the previously mentioned Salem Witch Trials and the much more atrocious witch burnings. Wizard lives were at risk of prosecution simply because they chose to help Muggles when they should not have. As a result, the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy, which forbade wizards from revealing themselves to Muggles, was established. The wizarding world was rightfully horrified by the escalating violence of the Muggle community and the failed attempts at diplomacy with Muggle government. Well, in response to the growing tensions, the Ministry of Magic was established to provide order and protection. Not long after, the first minister, Ulick Gamp, also founded the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Number 5. The crafting of the Sword of Gryffindor. The Sword of Gryffindor doesn't have the most decorated history, aside from what most fans already know. What we do know is that this highly sought-after sword was created by goblins in the 10th century for Godric Gryffindor, but there was a bit of bitterness involved. The sword was made by King Ragnuk I, the Goblin King, and a skilled silversmith, who poured his heart into creating his magnus opus. He adorned it with rubies and crafted it from pure silver. Unfortunately, the more time he spent on the sword, the more he convinced himself it belonged to him. He even tried to steal it from Godric Gryffindor, but obviously failed, and spent the rest of his life resentful. The sword was later used by Harry, Dumbledore, Neville, and many of the main characters for different reasons. Number 4. The creation of the Golden Snitch and its subsequent addition to Quidditch. Did you know that the history behind the Golden Snitch is a little darker than what you might expect? Quidditch matches didn't always have golden snitches. In fact, the tiny little golden ball we so famously know now was made centuries after Quidditch even originated. So, what were they using? Well, they were using golden snidgets, a chubby little golden bird with wings that rotated 360 degrees and moved exactly like a golden snitch. In fact, it's the snitch that was designed to move exactly like the snidget. Unfortunately, in the 13th century, snidgets, because of being so extensively used in these matches, were about to go extinct. That's when a man named Bowman Wright invented the snitch to replace it. He made the little ball exactly like a snidget so that it would mimic the bird's movements to a T. Number 3. The first Quidditch World Cup. I mean, it's pretty much a no-brainer that Quidditch originated way before the events of Harry Potter, but it's also pretty obvious that a game this extensive comes with an equally extensive history. While Quidditch itself had emerged way back in the 11th century, the first official World Cup was played in 1473. From what we know from the Harry Potter universe, the Golden Snitch had just been recently introduced into the game, and the World Cup itself only had European teams. It was also known as the most violent Quidditch game ever recorded in history. The final match was held between Transylvania and Flanders. All 700 of the fouls were committed, leaving no room for anyone to actually win in peace. I mean, the match even gave rise to fouls that were not even previously known to be fouls. Number 2. World War I and its hidden magical front. The First World War, or what we know as World War I, obviously doesn't require any introductions. We know it happened between 1914 and 1918 and was devastating for the world. But surely, there was some wizardry involvement in the Great War as well. Well, yes and no. Wizards and witches were strictly banned from taking part in the war in any way, shape, or form. The then Minister of Magic, Archer Evermond, passed actual legislation legislation that prohibited magic folk from being involved in it. Yet, knowing what Harry Potter is today, we know there were some prominent wizards and witches who went against this rule. Newt Scamander's older brother, Theseus Scamander, was actively involved in the war and even got himself labeled as a war hero. Newt himself had a hand in assisting on the Eastern Front through Ukrainian iron-bellied dragons. A book by the wizard Simon Dentata, The Owl Air Force: True Life Tales of War in Europe, details the involvement of magic in World War I, including this secret and highly mysterious force called the Owl Air Force. Number 1. The Salem Witch Trials. What if I told you that the Salem Witch Trials weren't just a dark chapter of Muggle history, but also a turning point for the wizarding world? Since Harry Potter is canonically set in the real world and the Salem Witch Trials are a set of real-life tragedies pertaining to magic, they naturally had a major impact on the Harry Potter world. The Salem Witch Trials were a series of prosecutions centering around groups of people accused of practicing dark magic and wizardry. They occurred in 1692 and lasted through half of 1693. They resulted in 20 people, predominantly women, from Salem, Massachusetts, being executed. This tragedy changed the entire framework of the magical community in America. While there were some muggles among the 20 people who were executed, more than half of them were magic folk. The magic folk who branched out into the more muggle areas became wary after the trials happened. The worst part was that at least 2 of the people who presided over these trials were sorcerers, rogue wizards who basically threw their own kind under the bus for some personal vendetta. For more information, the trials are covered in grim detail in Carlos Eduardo's book, The Scars of Salem: Essays on the Witch Trials of 1692. From dark curses to legendary wizards, the wizarding world is as messy as it is magical. It holds a history of ambition, betrayal, and a whole lot of untold stories. But just like the Chamber of Secrets couldn't stay hidden forever, neither could the truth of its past. But hey, that's what makes it so spellbinding, don't you think? I'll catch you in the next one.